Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're really getting into it with Karin Slaughter's Pretty Girls. It's a thriller, but it's more than that. Um, yeah, it's really about suspense more than anything else. And we're going to unpack just why it's so gripping.
Yeah, we're really talking about this family just shattered,
Yeah.
by this disappearance in their past. And they're still just grappling with all this unspoken trauma even years later. And I think just when you think you're starting to get a handle on the three sisters, Julia, Lydia, and Claire at the heart of it all, Slaughter just throws this total curveball.
Right. Right from the start, we're just thrown right into it with those three.
Yeah.
Each sister, like, dealing with the fallout of Julia disappearing in their own way. But none of them have really escaped it. Not really.
And it's really fascinating how Slaughter uses that opening letter addressed to Julia to set the tone. It's heartbreaking, of course, full of longing. But there's this underlying current of something off. It's almost like the letter itself is trying to hide some darker truth.
It's like when you see those family photos where everyone's smiling, but something feels off. Like you can sense the tension just behind their eyes, and that part about their father caring for that abused dog. Did that stand out to you at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really stood out to me. It makes you think about patterns of pain and dysfunction, almost like he's trying to atone for something. Or maybe it's more like this warped sense of control because he couldn't control,
And then fast forward, we meet Claire. Perfect life, right? Successful career, got her loving husband, Paul. But, Slaughter doesn't let us stay comfy for too long. That news report about the missing girl, Claire's getting more and more uneasy. It's like the ground is starting to shift under her feet.
And that line from the bartender that seems so throwaway about how reactions are different for ugly, missing women, it's like Slaughter just subtly weaving in social commentary. Makes you think about how we value some lives over others, How appearances can be deceiving.
And then, boom, it all just falls apart when Claire finds those videos on Paul's computer.
This is where Slaughter's mastery of suspense really kicks in, I think. She could have just said he had disturbing videos and been done with it, but she goes further, She gives us that detail about Final Cut Pro, the editing software. And that makes Paul's depravity feel real, calculated.
Yeah. Like she's saying, this isn't just some monster in the shadows. This is your husband using everyday tools, everyday technology to indulge his darkest desires. Chilling.
Exactly. And the way she connects those fictional videos to real life, it forces you to think about the fact that this happens. It could happen anywhere, to anyone.
So Claire's world implodes. And she does something that really surprised me, honestly. She confronts Paul directly with a gun. Was that believable for you? I mean, given what we know about Claire at this point, it seems out of character.
I think it really shows how well Slaughter developed her characters. Claire is conditioned to analyze, to be the perfect wife, as you said. But then this discovery, it triggers something primal. She's not even thinking at this point. She's just reacting.
And how Paul reacts is chilling. The detail about how he seems to almost enjoy her pain, that's textbook manipulation, isn't it?
It's beyond manipulation even. That's pure sadism. He likes it when she suffers, And it cements his control over everything that's happening. And then when he says that line about her being the only woman he's ever loved, it's meant to keep her tethered, to make her doubt herself and her instincts.
As if things couldn't get worse, Lydia's dragged into it all too. The reunion, it's electric, all this tension. We know something happened between them, something with Paul, but we're only getting these little glimpses of it.
And this is where Slaughter excels. Just as you think you're getting a grasp on things on one layer of the story, she just yanks it away and reveals something deeper. More secrets and more betrayals. It's masterful storytelling, keeps you on the edge of your seat wondering what's next.
So we left off with Claire and Lydia back together, but with all this baggage from the past. And of course, Paul's darkness hanging over everything. And just when you think it can't get more complicated, Slaughter throws in Lydia's world.
And it really is a different world from Claire's perfect life.
Yeah.
Lydia's fighting addiction, barely keeping her head above water, trying to raise her teenage daughter, and her relationship is a mess. I mean, it's passionate, but it's a mess. It's almost like Slaughter's showing us what happens when the perfect family idea completely falls apart.
And those mothers at Dee's basketball games, Oh my God, it's like they're this Greek chorus judging everyone, all this competition, but hidden behind smiles.
Right. They're all about keeping up appearances, fitting into that mold. They're so busy trying to look perfect that they can't even see the real connections right in front of them.
Makes you wonder how many of us do that too, right? Put on a brave face when we're struggling. But back to the sisters. That scene at Paul's grave, intense. Lydia wants to destroy it, and then Claire shows up, and it's like everything explodes.
Years of everything, resentment and guilt and pain they haven't talked about just comes pouring out. Don't forget, Claire is still dealing with the shock of finding out who Paul really is, and then she has to deal with Lydia's anger too.
Yeah, and we finally get some answers about what happened between them. That whole thing with Paul, how he betrayed both of them. It's like a wound that never closed up.
And it just shows how complicated their relationship is. There's love there and loyalty, but there's also this deep hurt that affects everything. And Slaughter doesn't shy away from showing that.
But even with all that, there's something else there too. Like when they talk about Julia, it's so sad, but it reminds you that they're connected.
Right. Julia is always there, even though she's gone. A reminder of what they've lost, both of them, and as a family. And in that grief, that shared grief, maybe there's a chance for them to heal. Maybe.
And then, just when you think they're starting to actually connect, Claire drops another bomb.
Mm-hmm.
She found proof that Paul was hiding money, doing shady business. Like being a monster wasn't enough. He had to be a con man too.
And remember how his office was so organized, like everything was perfect, it was all fake, just a way to control what Claire knew? He wants her to think she knows everything, but he's always one step ahead.
Yeah, all those passwords he made sure to share. Total manipulation. He's playing chess, and Claire's stuck with checkers.
But even Claire isn't ready for what she finds next. All those files, heavy boxes, labeled personal. Talk about a Pandora's box of secrets.
And the timing is perfect. Just when you think you've got Paul figured out, Slaughter throws this in a letter from their dad, Sam, right before he died.
That letter was something else. Sam talks about how obsessed Paul was with Claire, all these creepy comments about family. It's obvious he saw something bad in Paul, something that really bothered him.
And now his suicide doesn't make sense anymore. Did Sam know something he shouldn't have? Did someone shut him up? And it makes you wonder, you know? And suddenly everything's even more dangerous. It's like we're seeing Paul for the first time, the same way Sam saw him years ago. And the worst part, Claire hasn't even told Lydia everything. She's still protecting her.
Yeah.
But how long can that last?
It just builds the suspense. We know there's more to come, more darkness to uncover. Slaughter's really good at keeping you hooked, wondering just how bad things are going to get.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Pretty Girls. And let me tell you, things get intense, like really fast. Last we saw, Claire was dealing with that letter from her dad, starting to see who Paul really was. But it gets so much worse, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, way worse. That letter, it wasn't just about Paul. It was like Claire suddenly saw the bigger picture, like all the pieces just clicked.
Right. Like when you finally figure out a mystery, but instead of feeling good, it's just awful. And that whole thing with the name Buckminster Fuller, Paul acted like it was nothing, just an old family friend, but then it's all over those videos. Talk about creepy.
Total misdirection.
Yeah.
Slaughter leads you down one path and then he yanks you back. And the way she talks about Paul's perfect little world and then that house, the Fuller house, falling apart, it's brilliant. Who knew a house could be so creepy?
And what they find there, those tapes, each one worse than the last.
Yeah.
And that's when we realize it's not just Paul, is it? His own father, Gerald Scott, was involved too. All those flashbacks with Julia, how he manipulated everyone. It's like this awful family tradition or something.
Exactly. It's like abuse is a cycle, you know?
Yeah.
Passed down through generations. And Slaughter doesn't sugarcoat it. She shows how these things happen in families, hidden where no one can see.
But there's another layer too, something that really made me go back and reread parts to make sure I got it. Ben Carver. On death row. He said he knew something about Julia, even mentioned someone else making those tapes. Seemed like a dead end, but then...
It all comes together, and that's what Slaughter does so well. All those different threads, the letters, the tapes, the memories, and then bam. Carver wasn't talking about himself. He meant Gerald Scott the whole time.
Blew my mind. Paul wasn't just covering for himself. He was trying to protect his dad's secrets. This whole messed up family business of hurting women.
And remember those phone calls? After Paul was dead, he wasn't just messing with Claire. He was making sure his plan worked, even after he was gone.
Crazy, right? It makes you wonder about everything that happened, every little detail. But Claire, even though she's trapped in this nightmare Paul created, she finds a way to fight.
She uses his own tricks against him, plays the game, figures out his next move, and leads him right back to that house where it all started.
That last scene is so intense, like something's about to break. You feel like you're right there with Claire, knowing how important every choice is, every risk.
Lydia's fighting for her life, Claire's risking everything, and then the fire. It's just, wow, pure chaos.
And somehow through it all, there's hope. They get out, all messed up, but free. And that part where they go back to the well, where they finally bring Julia home, it's sad, but hopeful, you know. It shows how strong they are together as sisters.
Yeah, Slaughter doesn't give you a happy ending exactly. There's justice, but there's also all that pain, all that they lost. It's a good reminder that some things leave scars forever.
Pretty Girls is dark, but it makes you think. It's about violence, about manipulation, but it's also about how strong family can be, even when things are really bad. So, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
It's been intense going this deep, really looking at the worst parts of people. But even so, there's this weird sense of hope. Claire and Lydia, what they went through and how strong they are, it reminds us that even when things are awful, there's always a chance for things to get better.
That's what I love about stories like this. You finish the book, but it stays with you. It makes you think about yourself, about the world. Until next time, keep those pages turning, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.